Every Sunday morning, your parish priest says Mass for the people of the parish, and this morning's no exception. I've just finished saying Mass for all of you, and you've been very much in my thoughts and prayers, even though the church is empty naturally. It's a lovely day today, Laetare Sunday, the Sunday in the middle of Lent that takes its theme from the first words of the introit. Rejoice, Jerusalem, and all who love her. Be joyful, all who were in mourning. You know, very often I think we don't feel that Lent is a particularly joyful time because it's a time when we give things up and when we think about the passion and sufferings of our Lord. So joy isn't the first thought that we have. But isn't there a bit of a realisation when we have today's Mass that for a Christian person, even in a time which is quite sombre, nevertheless, joy can't help breaking through. Joy will always have the last word. And of course this Lent particularly, I suppose we have our anxieties and our sombre thoughts, but that joy must always be there. It's a deep joy. It's not the same, of course, as just human happiness or as cheerfulness, which is a very shallow thing. It's a deep joy. Sometimes, you know, in life, you get little thoughts knocking at the door of your mind, and they're quite insistent, and you think perhaps those things are God speaking to you in little ways. And I had this over the last couple of weeks, and it was quite a simple thing, really. First of all, somebody asked me, when they were talking to me, if I'd ever read the Revelations of Divine Love by Julian of Norwich. And other things have happened that have brought Julian of Norwich to my attention, and most recently, a couple of days ago, I was in St Austin's school interviewing for some jobs, and my mind was elsewhere perhaps for a moment, and I looked on the wall and there was a framed manuscript with one of Julian of Norwich's famous sayings. So I just thought I'd like to speak to a little bit about Julian of Norwich, because she seems to me to be a very good example of this business of joy in the midst of rather sombre events. Julian of Norwich lived in the town of Norwich in the Middle Ages, in the 14th century, which was an absolutely hellish century. In her lifetime, the Black Death came to Norwich. It killed a third of the people of Norwich. It may even have killed her family. We know very little about her background. In her lifetime, the country was in absolute turmoil because there was the Peasants' Revolt and then the suppression of the Peasants' Revolt, which was a huge social upheaval in the country. The church was very disturbed because a particularly English heresy, Lollardy, came to the fore in her lifetime and was disturbing the peace of the church. But Julian of Norwich somehow or other managed to rise above those things. I think she has something to say to us because of the turmoil of her times. She's also got something to say to us because she did an extraordinary thing with her life. She decided to go into complete isolation and seclusion. She renounced the world and she was locked for life into a cell in the little parish church of St Julian in Norwich. It's why we call her Julian of Norwich, actually. We're not really even sure what her real first name was, but she was locked into a cell in the church of St Julian of Norwich and lived the life of what was called an anchorite, a kind of hermit in the middle of the town of Norwich. I think she's got something to say to us, because I was on the phone to my sister yesterday evening and she was saying that already being isolated and shut into the house was driving her mad, and I'm sure it's doing the same to many of you, but imagine Julian of Norwich was there for years. The reason we know about her at all is because she wrote a really rather wonderful little book here with me. It was a book that she wrote, the first real English book written by a woman, actually, a wonderful little thing. It was because earlier in her life, she'd had a very serious illness herself, and when the priest was giving her the last rites and held the crucifix in front of her eyes, she had a vision of our Lord in his passion, and he spoke to her, and she wrote down the things that had been revealed to her. The book is, as I said earlier, called The Revelations of Divine Love. And it's a very, very positive book. Its message is terribly positive. I want to read out a little quotation from the book where our Lord was talking to Julian of Norwich. And she says this. It's very appropriate for us today, I think. He said not, "Thou shalt not be tempested, thou shalt not be travailed, thou shalt not be diseased," but he said, "Thou shalt not be overcome." Isn't that a wonderful thing? Thou shalt not be overcome. Whatever happens to us, and sometimes troubling things do happen to us. We may be diseased, or we may be tormented or tempted or whatever, but in the end, we will not be overcome. And that is a very encouraging thing. Her most famous saying was when, with great gentleness, our Lord said to her, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." It's not just a sort of cheery optimism that Julian of Norwich gives us. It's the joy that today's Mass is about, actually. The joy of knowing that if we believe in God, if we trust in him, whatever trials may come our way, in the end, if we have faith, all will be well. God bless you all.